Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Iron Maiden-A-Thon. Today we are of course talking about the comeback album, Bruce Dickinson's return to the band, Brave New World, the 2000 album from the band, and we'll jump right into it here. It was recorded in April of 2000 at Guillaume Tell Studios in Paris. It was released May 29th, 2000. Producer was Kevin Shirley and Steve Harris. And the background of it, so if you didn't watch the last video, Blaze Bayley was fired from Iron Maiden, or let go, or whatever euphemism you would like to use for that. He was let go, so they had to look for a new singer. It didn't take them very long to find one after Rod Smallwood suggested, hey, we've got this guy, this Bruce Dickinson guy, we know him, we love him, we know our faults with him, we know everything about him, why don't we try bringing him back? At first, Steve Harris wasn't really down with the idea. He was kind of apprehensive, but at the end of the day, the devil you know is better than the one you don't know. And so they brought Bruce Dickinson back. Bruce Dickinson had a couple of, not demands, but things listed for his return that he wanted, one of which was Adrian Smith had to return with him. And he did. Adrian Smith joined on at the same time that Bruce Dickinson did. Another condition was that the album that they made wasn't just going to be some, piece of crap reunion album that they would sell, just to make money off of. It was going to be an actual state-of-the-art heavy metal record, and that's what this album is. It started with the Ed Hunter release, which was a compilation album and a video game that was originally supposed to come out in 1998. Or pardon me, 1997, that got pushed back and then pushed back again. That released on May 17th, 1999. It spawned the Ed Hunter Tour, which was the first tour with Bruce Dickinson. That was their sort of big coming out reunion party. They played a bunch of classic songs that they hadn't played in a long time. They played some songs they haven't played live since, like Stranger in a Strange Land. Pour one out. I hope we get to hear that song live eventually. Blaze Bayley was asked to leave at this point before all of this happened. Yannick Herz, when Adrian Smith was brought back in, he offered to leave to, reunite the sort of classic Iron Maiden album, and everybody said, hell no, we want 3 guitarists. Blaze Bayley was asked to leave at this point, and so Yannick Herz even admitted that, we made him sing songs outside of his vocal range, and we refused to tune down, and so that's kind of the downfall of Blaze Bayley and Iron Maiden. The songs that they did write for his voice and for him were amazing. And then his performances on some of the Bruce Dickinson songs, in my opinion, some of them were good, some of them were bad. But that's what happens when you get somebody to try to sing outside of their vocal register when the previous singer was Bruce Dickinson. According to Adrian Smith, there were 4 songs written already for Brave New World that were actually written for Virtual 11. The Nomad, Dream of Mirrors, the Mercenary, and there was a 4th one in the interview that he gave where he said, I don't remember the 4th one, but Steve Harris has said that the ideas for Blood Brothers were kicking around at the time, so you could say that Blood Brothers was probably that 4th song. Derek Riggs did the top portion of the album cover. Here, let me just show it to you. Actually, I have the CD right here. Derek Riggs did the top portion right here of Eddie in the Clouds, and Steve Stone did the bottom portion here with the city, the London, the futuristic-looking London. This was the last album that Derek Riggs did with the band. He cited them being way too difficult to work with. And so for the single for the Wicker Man, there's an alternate cover for that Derek Riggs did. That was The Straw That Broke His Back. The Brave New World Tour saw them play over 81 shows from June 2nd of 2000 to March 21st of 2002. That all culminated in the Rock in Rio performance that they got the video and the CD for. It's a great show if you ever get to listen to it or watch it. There's a especially good sort of longer uncut version of the live stream that they did where they play a couple more songs that aren't actually on the album. The Wicker Man and Out of the Silent Planet were the 2 singles from the record. The Wicker Man obviously should have been a single. That's a perfect one. Out of the Silent Planet, pretty good song. I might have picked Ghost of the Navigator or another track to be the single, or I would have just picked more singles because there's 10 songs on this album, and some of them are quite lengthy. That's it for the background. Before we get into the track-by-track analysis, of course, you know the drill by now. We're going to go through the CD, the best value here. So let's take a look at the inside here of what it looks like. Let me get the disc out without destroying it. So that's what that looks like with the disc and everything. It's kind of a cool image. Behind the disc, it's obviously just some clouds, nothing special. Let's get the little booklet out here without destroying everything. On the back of the album, obviously, I need to show you that. Just a cool picture of the band looking up. And then there's the back of the booklet. And we'll go through this real quick so we can get to the album, because there's a lot that I want to say about these songs. This is some people's favorite Iron Maiden album. This is some people's... it's in the middle. You don't see too many people saying that this is their least favorite or anything like that. There are quite a few good songs on this album. Even if you don't like some of them, you know, you can't really deny the Wicker Man. You can't really deny Blood Brothers. You can't really deny Out of the Silent Planet, stuff like that. And then that's it. Very simple, straightforward. I think they wanted to just, you know, focus on the music with this release and the production behind it, because they didn't want to just, you know, be one of those bands that puts out a reunion album. We're reuniting with our guitarist and our singer from the 80s and the early 90s. Okay, well, actually, we're not doing any new music on the tour. We're just going to do all of our, you know, classic songs. This tour did not do that. They played a pretty wide selection of songs from this album on the Brave New World tour. We'll get to that in the track-by-track analysis, which is right now. So first off, we have The Wicker Man by Adrian Smith, Steve Harris, Bruce Dickinson. It comes in at 4 minutes and 35 seconds long. If you've seen Iron Maiden at all in the past 20 years since this album came out, they've opened a lot with The Wicker Man on tours. It's on the Legacy, the Beast tour. They had it sort of in the middle of the section. It sort of occupied that slot that the Trooper normally takes up, where they have it after a really long song and the crowd's kind of out of it, and then you just hear the opening riff of this song and everybody gets right back into it. It's like a shot in the arm. It's inspired by the British cult film of the same name, starring Christopher Lee, and then later remade with Nicolas Cage, with one of the greatest memes of all time about the bees. The song came together from a riff from Adrian Smith, and then Bruce Dickinson just started like riffing lyrics, and then Steve Harris started playing bass alongside of it. It was sort of a natural progression for a song for them. The radio single version, I didn't actually know this up until like a couple years ago, that there's a radio single version of this song that is different than the studio version. And it's not like a normal single version where there's a longer version. The radio version has these sort of extra vocals in the chorus, which if you're gonna ask me, I don't really like them. It's just kind of, they're just kind of extra. They don't really need to be there. Like, the original song is so good. Why do you need to add these extra vocals? I don't know. You don't hear it very often. It's sort of a rarity. You can look it up on YouTube, but I don't really particularly care for it. There's a reason why they didn't do that on the studio album. The single art, like I was saying before, that I can show you right here, it looks like the Wicker Man from the movie, except that it's Eddie, was rejected, and Derek Riggs said basically, okay, I'm done. You guys are too hard to work with. I don't really want to do this anymore. If you guys are going to be this difficult. And so then it was just replaced with a picture of the band by Mark Wilkinson. It's one of the best opening tracks in Iron Maiden history, in my opinion. I don't know why I keep saying in my opinion. This is my video. You're watching it. It's one of the best opening tracks in Iron Maiden history. It's one of their best concert opening tracks, like I was saying. It just gets everybody going. You just hear whatever the hell the intro is to the tour, and then you hear the guitar riff kick in, and it's quite a simple guitar riff when you try to learn it and play it, but obviously to play it like Iron Maiden and play it with all the solos, it's pretty difficult. I really love hearing this one live, and like I said with the X Factor, if I could get a time machine and go back and listen to this stuff in the era without having any, there was still the internet here, but you had slow download speeds, and sort of Napster, I guess, was around now, but imagine not hearing this song, because you would hear The Wicker Man months before on YouTube, before the album came out, and then you'd hear it, you'd listen to it all day, like I do with all of the Iron Maiden singles that come out before the album. But imagine you either pop this on or you heard the single. This is the first Bruce Dickinson track in, 7 years? 8 years at this point? So, yeah, imagine hearing this for the first time back then, and what you were thinking about it. I'm sure there's some people that are watching this that have that experience. It was similar with the X Factor that I was saying. Imagine putting on the X Factor and hearing Sign of the Cross, the opening of it, and you're not knowing what you're going to expect from Iron Maiden. The Wicker Man, very, 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 very good song. Met expectations and exceeded them beyond their wildest dreams. One of my favorite tracks by the band. I love this track. But let's get on to my favorite track on the album. Surprising, I know. It's better than The Wicker Man. It is Ghost of the Navigator. This is in my... I'm going to say it again there. I was about to say it. This is Iron Maiden personified. This is Iron Maiden in a nutshell here. They're telling you a story. They have heavy metal guitars. Bruce Dickinson is wailing. It's got the galloping bass, the thundering drums. It's everything that you need out of an Iron Maiden song. It's long. It was written by Yannick Herz, Bruce Dickinson, and Steve Harris. It is 6 minutes and 50 seconds. It is the band at their best. It's the story of a sailor on their last voyage going out to sea, and on the way they see the ghosts of everyone that's gone before them, and it captures that feeling that you get like if you read the Odyssey, or you like Pirates of the Caribbean a little bit, or like the Flying Dutchman, stuff like that, just like that nautical vibe. It captures that perfectly to a T here on the track. And then by the end of the track, the sailor joins the ghosts that they saw along the way. It wasn't a single. They played it on the Brave New World Tour. They played it on the beginning part of the Final Frontier World Tour, where they only played really songs from this new era of Iron Maiden. I wish they would do that again, by the way, or do that for separate certain eras, like how they did with Summer Back in Time, or with they really didn't really do it with Legacy of the Beast. They just sort of focused on sort of Peace of Mind era songs. But look for that video, the Dream set list for the Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, No Prayer for the Dying, and Fear the Dark era. Only songs besides 2 or 3 for a set list centered around the story of Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Ghost of the Navigator, it's one of my favorite tracks on the album. It's one of my favorite tracks in Iron Maiden's history. I love this song. I want to hear it live again. It's just that great. You know, what else can I say about it? So we'll get to the title track, number 3 here. Brave New World by Dave Murray, Steve Harris, and Bruce Dickinson, coming in at 6 minutes and 18 seconds long. It's obviously based on the novel by Aldous Huxley. It goes through the similar imagery, similar themes of that novel. It's another example of the band and their attraction to literary works or literary themes, or shaping albums or shaping things around works of literature. It's just, these first 3 songs, well, the first 4 really, are just like, I don't think you can get any better than this for an Iron Maiden album, for opening an album. You just have, you know, the Wicker Man that kicks your ass right away, the Ghost of the Navigator, which shows you what Iron Maiden can do, and then Brave New World, which does more of that with the literary themes. It's a track that they don't play live too often. They played it on this tour. I think they played it on the Dance of Death tour for a little bit. But I would love to hear this track live. It's got a great chorus. It just really just kicks ass all the way through. Brave New World, one of the better title tracks for an album for Iron Maiden. Obviously, Number of the Beast is probably the number 1. But, you know, it's one of their better title tracks when you think about it, because most of their title tracks are sort of underrated and held down. Fear the Dark, obviously, one of them too. But stuff like Somewhere in Time, or Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, stuff like that. But we're on to the next song. This is a song that they've played a lot in recent memory. This is Blood Brothers. It's by Steve Harris. It comes in at 7 minutes and 14 seconds long. And if there's an Iron Maiden song out there that's going to make you cry, it's this one. It's one that makes you just grab random people, grab random strangers at an Iron Maiden concert and put your arm around them and put your hand up in the air and scream, "We're Blood Brothers," because everyone at an Iron Maiden show, unless there's a couple assholes, there's always a couple assholes. Everybody's there to have a good time. Everybody's there to be blood brothers with one another, blood sisters, whatever the hell you want to call it. We're all human beings. It's about brotherhood. It's about love. It's about respect. It's about supporting one another. They always, whenever they play this song, they always dedicate it to either fallen friends, fallen fans, fallen people, victims of disasters. They dedicated it to Ronnie James Dio when he died. They dedicated it to victims of the Christchurch earthquake, stuff like that, where it just really evokes like a very strong emotion in you of just, respect and brotherhood and love and all of that good stuff. And at the end of the day, we're all blood brothers out there in the world. Let's start acting like it. We might have dissenting opinions and stuff like that for people, but at the end of the day, we are human beings. We are, blood brothers. So we could all be a little bit better towards each other, can't we? Next up, we have track number 5. We have The Mercenary by Yannick Herz and Steve Harris coming in at 4 minutes and 42 seconds long. It is about a hired gun that sort of goes through a crisis of life. They can't, show their face or else they'll be compromised. Their mission will be compromised, whatever they're doing. It's a pretty standard rocker. It sort of hits this like shelf. And not really, because the next track after this I really like, but this album, it has some like really high points, and then it doesn't have really low points, but it has like a lot of those middle points where you're like, it's an Iron Maiden song. Most of their Iron Maiden songs are great. Most of them are much better than anybody else's songs, but the ones that are sort of in that middle tier, that lower middle tier, like this track, when you compare them to the Wicker Man or whatever, they don't really stand out as much. It does have a bit of that Blaze Bayley Iron Maiden sound to it. You can listen to a song from Virtual 11, really Virtual 11, less so the X Factor, but you can listen to a song from Virtual 11 and this just sounds like it should have been on that album. Maybe it should have been on that album. It might have made that album a little bit better, but this was one of the songs, obviously, that was written for Virtual 11 that got ported over to Brave New World with Bruce Dickinson's voice. Don't ask me if I think if Bruce Dickinson or Blaze Bayley would have sung the song better. Who cares? I don't know. But it's like a 7 out of 10 song. If it's your favorite song, I'm sorry. It's not like it's Mother Russia and it's a pile of crap, but that's for some of the people that have been commenting on the videos about No Prayer for the Dying. Outside of that, whatever. Not my favorite song on the album. Not the worst song on the album, though. Kind of just a 7 out of 10. I don't know. Next up, we have the longest song on the album. We have Dream of Mirrors. It comes in at 9 minutes and 21 seconds long. It's written by Yannick Herz and Steve Harris. This was another track that was written for Virtual 11. It's about sort of this narrator, the person who's speaking, whatever you want to say, having a recurring nightmare that actually ends up coming true. Blaze Bayley apparently wrote parts of this song but wasn't credited. He was a little disappointed in that. I don't know how that would actually work if he actually wrote the whole song and they wanted to put it on this. That would be a little weird from like a rights money standpoint. I don't know. If he did write it, that sucks, Blaze, but like tough titties, like Bruce Dickinson sung your song. I don't know. It's incredibly dense and deep as a song lyrically. It just, like, you listen to the song and you read the lyrics and you're like, wow, this is some dense stuff. It's like reading War and Peace or whatever. But it's a great, great triple guitar song. You can really hear the triple guitars on this one, along with Steve Harris's bass. So you've got 4 guitars going all at once on this track, on all these tracks. But on this track in particular, you can really, really hear the triple guitar, the thundering herd that, you can call them. And it just goes to show that Bruce Dickinson cannot be beat vocally. Bruce Dickinson is the metal vocalist. I know Rob Halford's the metal god. Ronnie James Dio is, the metal whatever godfather. Ozzy's the grandfather of heavy metal, whatever you want to say. Bruce Dickinson he can't be beat. From a frontman standpoint, from a vocal standpoint, this track, a lot of these new tracks show off his voice. But yeah, he's really good on this track. This track's really good. I really like this song. Another one of those ones that I wish they would play live, but it is a longer track, so it's kind of hard to fit into the set list when they make it, because, you kind of got to get to around 15 to 17 songs for Iron Maiden these days, and it's got to fit in the 2 hours, so a 9-minute song, that takes up a pretty good percentage of the real estate. Obviously, they've played 13-minute songs and 12-minute songs and all that on recent tours, but it's sort of hard to fit a lot of those in. You got to fit some of those shorter songs in, like Wrathchild or Flight of Icarus on the Legacy of the Beast tour. Next up, we have The Fallen Angel from Adrian Smith and Steve Harris. Comes in at exactly 4 minutes long. This is one of those tracks, like I was saying, where it's sort of not a filler track, but it's in that lower middle tier. If you go back and read my written review of this track on that hashtag show, I was a little hard on it. I listened to it a lot for this review. It's sort of this could have been a single, but it's not track, where it sort of sounds radio-ish. That's a lot of Adrian Smith songs. Not a diss against Adrian Smith songs. I love Adrian Smith songs. That's just sort of how his tracks go, where they're shorter and more catchy. This does have a very catchy chorus. It is a catchy song at its heart, but it's just not one of my favorite songs. I don't know. It's just something I can't get into. It's not a track I find myself coming back to a lot. But The Fallen Angel, it is a decent track. If you really like it, you can really like it. But it's not something that I come back to a whole hell of a lot. Next up, we have track number 8, which is my least favorite on the album. We have the Nomad, which is by Dave Murray and Steve Harris, at 9 minutes and 6 seconds. It is the last of those sort of mythical Virtual 11 tracks that got ported over. And this one is a bit of a misfire on the album. It does go for that sort of cashmere, sort of Middle Eastern, sort of sword and sorcery, not sword and sorcery, but like, you hear it and it evokes imagery of that sort of Middle Eastern mythology, culture, stuff like that. It does feel somewhat epic in its scale. It is a really long track. It has really epic parts. It's really progressive. But the track itself, just like it's sort of a slog to get through, and you get to those good parts, but then it's like surrounded by these sort of middling meh parts. It gets bogged down in its own sound a lot of the time. It's sort of where you get to those progressive tracks where, like, you have tracks like Rime of the Ancient Mariner or To Tame a Land that are progressive and really long, and sort of they have a lot of tone changes and stuff like that. This track goes for that vibe, but it doesn't exactly get it perfect like those other songs would. It is the worst, the least strong track on the album, if that's what you want to say. But yeah, it's kind of meh. I don't really revisit this song very much. I did it for this review. I listened to it a bunch, but outside of that, I don't really find myself putting this on very many playlists out there. Last two tracks, we have the final single for the album. We have Out of the Silent Planet by Yannick Herz, Bruce Dickinson, and Steve Harris. It comes in at 6 minutes and 25 seconds. This song, after the Nomad of sort of being up and down and sort of long and drawn out and bogged down, this song is incredibly upbeat. If you are feeling down and out, you really need to listen to this track because it just has plenty of energy and positivity, and not in sort of like an overt way. It's just a very positive, upbeat sort of sounding song. It has plenty of different meanings that you could judge from it. It could be based on the novel. It could be based on the movie Forbidden Planet. It could be just about, some sci-fi thing that these guys were thinking of when they wrote the song. The single version is shorter than the album version. It's only played live a couple times. Weirdly enough, they played it when they did on the Brave New World tour. They played it after the normal slot of like where the Iron Maiden concert ends. So if you're looking at the anatomy of an Iron Maiden concert, you obviously, if it's a new tour, you have the first two songs are usually the first two songs off the new album or in reverse order or something like that. The first song is always the lead single. It's always that. This album was the Wicker Man, and then Ghost of the Navigator, and Brave New World in this case. And then you have sort of your classic songs to get people back into it that weren't really listening for that stuff. And then you have sort of longer songs in the middle, and then you have the Trooper slot, which is right after those longer songs. And then usually end the main set with Fear of the Dark, Into Iron Maiden, the single. And then you have the encore, which is usually some sort of older song to get people back into it. This case, I think it was Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills, and Sanctuary, I want to say. And then after Sanctuary, they ended up playing The Fallen Angel. The Fallen Angel and Out of the Silent Planet. So after Sanctuary, which is normally a concert closer, it's like that or Running Free, they played these two new songs and ended the concert with Out of the Silent Planet, which they have never done since or before that. It was really strange to see that on setlist.fm, the website I use to get all the set lists for this stuff. It's just a strange way to do it. Obviously, it is a single from the album, but you'd think because of that, they would put it up further in the set list. I don't really know what they were thinking with that, if it was like a trial run for it. It didn't last very long. It was only for 4 concerts, obviously. But it is a great, underrated gem from this album. I really like this track. I go back to this track a lot. The vocals are really good. The guitars are really good. The solos are really well written. It's just a really well written song in general. I don't really like the single version because it cuts out some of the stuff, like the guitar solos and stuff like that. So if you're going to listen to one, listen to the studio version that's longer. Finally, we have The Thin Line Between Love and Hate by Dave Murray and Steve Harris, coming in at 8 minutes and 26 seconds. This track, I don't think, should have closed out the album. They should have flipped the last 2 songs and closed out with Out of the Silent Planet. I can get what they were going for. They were going for that To Tame a Land, Ride of the Ancient Mariner, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, stuff like that, as the closing track with your long progressive epic. But the last 3 tracks on this album are quite long and quite intricate. Normally they like to break it up a little bit, and you could say that Out of the Silent Planet is that sort of breaking up the 2 really long, dense songs. But the Nomad and this song are very, very intricate, very, very long, very, very complex songs. And this one is good. It's not great. It's not a perfect track by any means. But it's really, really highlighted by Bruce Dickinson's vocals, especially the last minute of the song, where that sort of has this tonal change where you can hear the guitar slowing down, and it's just like a vocal solo for Bruce Dickinson, basically. It's a very progressive metal sounding song. This is, if Rush made metal songs, this is what it would sound like. Or Yes, or any of those out there. If you like Yes, say it below or something. I don't know. I love Yes. It's not a bad song, but like the Nomad, it's not one that I revisit very often. I did listen to this one a little bit more in 2020. I listened to a lot of Iron Maiden in 2020 to help get through that hell of a goddamn year. It's great guitar work at the end of the track. But at the end of the day, I think it would have been a more impactful finish to the album overall if they ended with Out of the Silent Planet. Because I've done this because this is how much of an Iron Maiden nerd I am. I made a playlist of this album where I just flipped the 2. And the ending of this song flows really well into that opening guitar riff of Out of the Silent Planet. So I wish they would have done that. Whatever. The aftermath of this album, we're done with the track-by-track listing. The aftermath of this album, they went on that long, grueling tour. They supported the Clive Burr ALS Fund with, I think, 3 sold-out shows in London for his foundation to get money for ALS research. This is the best reunion album of any band out there, besides, of course, Perfect Strangers by Deep Purple. That is one of my favorite albums of all time. You cannot get better than that album. That album, top to bottom, is perfection. It is years and years of music that Deep Purple could have made together, and it just gets put out, and then the albums after that are a little bit of a letdown. But Deep Purple's Perfect Strangers, one of the best reunion albums of all time. This is probably number 2. Angel of Retribution by Judas Priest is probably number 3. And I guess you could say, I would say Redeemer of Souls is probably in there too as a reunion album because fuck K.K. Downing. But it's, the first couple tracks are really killer. You have sort of a letdown with the Mercenary, and then you have Dream of Mirrors, which is just, this album top to bottom is really, really good. It's not a bad album by any means. It is an Iron Maiden classic after all. It falters a bit, but then it picks itself back up, but then it sort of ends on like a note. It's going to get like an 8.5 out of 10, maybe a 9 out of 10 from me, depending on the day that I feel and what songs I listen to. It's not the best of the reunion era albums. However, you'll have to figure that one out when we get to the next couple albums. But boy, oh boy, this was a hell of a way to come back for Iron Maiden. It's a hell of a way back to introduce the world and say, hey, guess what? The best heavy metal band in the world is back with Brave New World. And they would keep showing the world that with their next release, Dance of Death, with the worst album cover art of all time. It doesn't get worse than Dance of Death. You'll have to see that in the next video, the next Iron Maiden-A-Thon. But from me to you, for now, from Eddie, from the boys, I'm going to have to say goodnight and up the irons. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We are on the road to 100 subscribers. If we can get over that number, maybe we'll do a giveaway or something like that. I don't know. It's a symbolic thing. The people who watch, make sure you subscribe. A lot of you out there are watching and not subscribing, but make sure you do that so you can see more of my videos about, horror movies and video games and more Iron Maiden and heavy metal content. But that'll do it for me. Thank you for watching. Up the irons and have a really great night.